Hey y'all, it's Coach in the Fight here, looking in chapter 35 of the Third Testament of the Bible. A few minutes ago, I was listening to the scripture, the audio version of the Third Testament of the Bible, and I said, you know what? I'm gonna let the Lord pick a chapter for me to read, and I'm gonna go right to the middle of the chapter. So I turned on the shuffle on my little iPod thingamabob, whatever you call it, and pushed the button, and it jumped to 35, and I went right in the middle of chapter 35, and it seemed like it was talking about telepathy. I'm like, you know what? This is some deep stuff. So I'm gonna go ahead and give a little class on it. Chapter 35 has three sections: sending and receiving. Well, let me tell you that the title of the chapter is called "The Power of Thoughts, Feelings, and the Will." Has three sections: sending and receiving thoughts and its effects, the strengths of feelings, desires, and fears, and the last section is the lack of self-control. And I promise you, this is going to be a lot of good insight, a lot of good information that we could use. So let's jump down here and get right into it. All right, so we're here in chapter 35, the first section, sending and receiving thoughts and its effects. Let's look at verse 1. It says, there are forces invisible to human sight and unknown to the science of man constantly influence your lives. All right, so there are invisible stuff out here that's having an effect on us. Verse 2 says, there are those which are good and those which are bad, some which give you health and others which cause illness. There are some filled with light and others with darkness. Now, we're in the Third Testament of the Bible, and when it talks about light and darkness, it's talking about light being the understanding and darkness being the opposite of understanding or ignorance. But in this section, we're talking about, the influences. Invisible influences. So I guess it's talking about things in the spirit world that is having an effect on us in this material world here. Right? Let's look at verse 3. It says, from where do these forces arise? From the spirit, disciples, from the mind, and from feelings. All right? It says, every incarnated and discarnated spirit emanates vibrations when it thinks. Every emotion exerts an influence. All right, now this is important right here. Now, when it's talking about disincarnated and incarnated, it's talking basically about spirits that are alive and spirits that are in the spirit world, or what we would call dead people. Those are the disincarnated spirits. They don't have a body to walk around in like we do. And then it talks about here, it says spirits emanate vibrations when it thinks, right? So even the spirits, when we think, we emanate vibrations, and when the people in the spirit world, when they think, they emanate vibrations too. He says you can be sure that the world is filled with these vibrations, meaning these thoughts that we're having are having an effect on the world. Now you can easily understand that healthy forces and influences must exist where people think and dwell in goodness, and that where they live outside of the laws and regulations which are determined by goodness, justice, and love, there must exist evil forces. Now, what this is saying, guys, I know this is kind of self-explanatory, and I'm kind of adding my input. I'm not sure if I'm straightening it up or making it more confused. I really just want to bring your attention to the scripture, hoping that you want to go read it for yourself. But what it's saying is when we're in an environment where everybody is having good thoughts, well, it's going to be an environment of goodness. But when we're in an environment where people are having bad thoughts, well, that's going to be an evil environment. Look at verse 6. Both of them invade the spiritual space, struggle with each other, and influence the sensitivity of man. If men knew how to distinguish between them, they take the good inspirations and reject those influences which are evil. But if the men are weak and not prepared in the practice of righteousness, they are unable to confront these vibrations and are in danger of succumbing to their dominance and becoming slaves to evil. Meaning, if you can't control your thoughts, it's going to get you in trouble. And a lot of us are in trouble. And so maybe it is because we need to get a rein and get a handle on the thoughts that we're having for each other, for ourselves, and for our environment. We need to have good thoughts, is what I'm understanding from this chapter. But let's go on. All right, verse 7. Everything spiritual in the universe is a fountain of light, visible and invisible to you. That light is strength, it is power, it is inspiration. From the ideas, words, and deeds, light also emanates, according to the purity and elevation that they have. The more elevated the idea or the deed, the more delicate and gentle the vibration and inspiration which emits from it. Although it is also more difficult for the slaves of materialism to perceive it, nevertheless, the effect which is exerted spiritually by the thoughts and elevated deeds is great. Look at this part right here. It says, although it is also more difficult for the slaves of materialism to perceive it, nevertheless, the effect which is exerted spiritually by the thoughts and elevated deeds is great. All right, so if you say, what does it mean to be a slave to materialism? These are people who try not to think in the spiritual world. They don't want to think anything spiritual, so they do stuff like watch a lot of television or turn the radio up real loud. They don't want to hear people talk about spiritual. They kind of avoiding it because they're slaves to materialism. They want to stay that way. When from your mind emerges an idea or a thought of light, in that manner it reaches its objective to fulfill its beneficial mission. If instead of thoughts and pure emanations surge from your mind, they will only cause harm wherever you send them. I say to you that thoughts are deeds, and as such they remain written in the book which exists in your conscience. Now we learn there in, I think it's chapter 6, where we're talking about the book of life, and so where we have a book that we're writing on our conscience of all the deeds that we are committing and doing down here on earth. Well, how about our thoughts are being added to this list? If we're having bad thoughts, it's just like a bad deed. And that's the purpose of this class. I want to bring this out because, we may not understand this. I was talking to an individual yesterday, and I've done so in the past myself, and I may be guilty of it even today and probably tomorrow too. When somebody does something that I don't like or does something to harm me, we tend to have bad thoughts about that person. Well, those bad thoughts turn into deeds that are written on our conscience, which meaning one day when we become spiritual beings, or when we when we are separated from our material beings and we awake to our conscience, we're going to have to answer for the thoughts that we've had, for even those that have been harming us. This is important stuff, guys. Look at verse 9. If your deeds are good or bad, you will receive multiplied what you wished for your brethren. Meaning, it doesn't matter what you're thinking, good or bad, it's going to be multiplied. It's going to come back on us. It's going to come back on you. So we can use this to our benefit too. We try to, we will struggle to only have good thoughts. But what about struggling to have good thoughts? If we have a lot of good thoughts, they come back multiplied too. Thank you, babe. And they'll actually be to our benefits. But it is better to do yourself some harm than to wish it upon your fellow man. Now, I can't say I quite understand, what this means here. It's better to do yourselves harm than to, wish harm on your fellow man. Why would you wish? I don't understand that part, so I'm just going to go on. This is why during the second era I said to you, what you sow, you reap. For it is necessary that you be aware of your experiences in this life, and that you remember that your harvest will give you back the same seed that you have sowed, although multiplied. So what they say, you reap what you sow, we think that's only related to what we do. But no, it's related to our thoughts too. When we're thinking that it only related to what we do, you have a lot of people that will put on a front in front of people, especially down there at the church, where everybody will act real nice down there when we are around each other. But as soon as we're out of each other's presence, we start backbiting and slandering and talking about so and so. I can't believe she was up in church today and she was at the club. But that kind of stuff is going to come back on us multiplied. So we have to watch that stuff, and we have to have good thoughts in order to to offset some of that bad stuff. So intentionally have good thoughts. Look at verse 11. It says, "O humanity, how you have neglected to meditate, feel, or live the teachings of your master," talking about the Messiah. Did he have any bad thoughts about anybody? No. Remember, even when they had him up on the cross, and they were poking him and sticking vinegar in his mouth and calling him all kinds of names and laughing at him, he didn't have any bad thoughts toward him. What did he say? He says, "Forgive them, Father, for they know not what they do." So even in the worst part of his, his passion or his life or whatever, he was still trying to have, he still was having good thoughts. I guess he know better. He knows not to have a bad thought against anybody. Because why? Because it comes back multiplied. Verse 12 said, "This is why I have told you that you did not know the strength of thought." We don't know the power of our thoughts. Today I tell you that thought is voice and hearing. It is a weapon and a shield. Our thoughts, weapon and a shield. It creates and destroys. Thoughts cuts the distance to those who are absent and finds those who have been lost. Think about the people that you love. A lot of us have children that are out there in the world. We're not knowing what they're doing. We're worried about them. Well, let's send some good thoughts about them. Let's have good thoughts. This says this cuts the distance between us when we share good thoughts for these people. But the opposite is true too, guys. If we're having bad thoughts about people, then we're distancing ourselves from them. Look at verse 13. Know your weapons before the battle commences, right? We know we have a big battle coming up, guys. We have a big battle. We have to understand what our weapons are, or we're going to be defeated. If you think your weapons are money or weapons or anything like this, you're going to be harmed. Our weapons include stuff like prayer, having good thoughts, charitable deeds, and we have to understand what these weapons are before the battle commences. He who knows how to prepare himself will be strong and invincible. Right? You want to be invincible? Better learn to control your thoughts. It will not be necessary to wield mortal weapons. Your sword will be thought pure and clean. Your shield, faith, and charity. Even in silence, your voice will resound a message of peace. Talking about our weapons. This is what we're going to have to use in this battle that's coming up that's called the tribulation. Remember, it's going to be a war against good versus evil. You better not run out there with an M16 in this one. You're going to lose, buddy. I'm telling you, it's not going to work. All your AKs and your SKSs, you better be selling them and giving them money to the poor. Let's look at verse 14. Keep vigil, being careful not to stain your mind with impure thoughts. The mind is creative, and when you give space to an evil idea, it will lead you to the lower planes, and your spirit will be surrounded with darkness. Guys, we got to get control of this thing. Look at it. I mean, it's a serious business. You can remember yourself. Before I even was aware of the Third Testament, I was, kind of a little bit aware of this. I ain't gonna say I knew it, but I did notice a relationship when I would bump my finger or stump my toe or do something. Right before that, I was having a bad thought about somebody. I remember telling my wife, every time I have a bad thought about this particular person that we were talking about, something bad would happen to me, and so now I'm learning what it is, and that's why we give all praises to the Father Creator for leaving us this word so we can then understand this stuff and then use it for our benefit. Verse 15 says, "The joined thoughts of a multitude will be capable of striking down evil influences, toppling idols from their pedestals." Okay? Talking about joined thoughts, when we all have collective thoughts, all right? So let's while we're watching this video, let's share some good thoughts towards people. Maybe we can focus our thoughts, good thoughts towards maybe our president, or maybe the Pope, or maybe the president of foreign countries like Russia or North Korea, or places that are having a lot of activity. Our thoughts can help these people is what it's saying. So let's send them good thoughts, not only just bad thoughts, because there's a lot of bad feelings about some of these people that we're talking about. Let's squelch that, because we don't really want to see bad stuff happening to them, to the world, or to ourselves. So let's send them good thoughts. Look at verse 16. "Today I can assure you that in the future communications through thought will reach great development." So they're going to get better. Right? So in the future, is he getting ready to talk about telepathy? And through it, many barriers that today separate peoples and worlds will disappear. Yeah, I believe he's talking about telepathy, where we know we are expecting a change in, our lives here, a huge change on a spiritual nature, where we're going to start, being more aware of our conscience and more aware of the Father and more aware of, nature and spiritual things. I believe that he's saying that we're going to, start to become kind of telepathic, where our thoughts can actually communicate with each other. Now, I've been trying it. Me and my kids, we've tried it a few times, and it don't work yet. But, he said in the future. It says, "If you learn to communicate in thought with your Father, if you achieve spirit-to-spirit communication, what difficulty could there then be in communicating with your brothers? By be they visible or invisible, present or absent, and nearby or far away. He's talking about telepathy. We're going to have I believe we have the ability now. We just don't know how to use it. It's not been developed. We're kind of abstract from such. But he's saying in the future we're going to be telepathic beings. Look at 17. Your thoughts have always come to me, no matter how imperfect they are. And I hear your prayers, even if they lack the faith that you should always put in them. Right? So I'm sure this is the section he talks about where he hears every thought you have. There's people who think they can hide from the Father. They can, just because they're, not thinking about him, they can go and have their bad thoughts or their bad deeds. He say he knows every thought you have. And we heard in the earlier, verses up there that they come back on us multiplied. This is because my spirit captures the vibrations and feelings in all beings. Remember, he dwells in all beings. The Father has saturated everything on the earth, including our minds, our souls, our spirits, and everything. So he knows everything. He's capturing these vibrations, meaning he's listening to our thoughts. Verse 18. However, men who find themselves distanced from others by their selfishness and distance from spiritual life by the materialism that they have allowed themselves to be wrapped in today are not prepared to communicate with others by means of their thoughts. So here's why we can't. This is why we do not have telepathy, or why we can't use it. This is what's stopping us, guys. Materialism and selfishness. So we got to put those things away. If we want to be able to communicate with each other, we got to put these things away. Look at 19. Nevertheless, I do tell you that it is necessary to begin to educate your spirit. To do so, speak to the spirits, even if you have no apparent answer from them. Meaning, try to talk to each other. Try to even, to develop it. So, you can imagine yourself sending, positive thoughts, or trying to communicate with, someone like me. I'm sure later on today, after thinking this, I'm going to be, looking at my wife and looking at my kids and sending them telepathy, trying to tell them to do stuff just to see if it worked, and but it says try, even though it doesn't seem to work at first. He's saying keep trying, because it has to be developed. We have to work on this thing. We're not quite there yet. Verse 20 says, tomorrow, when you have all learned to give, you will begin to have indications of a spiritual communication never imagined by man. So here's the key, guys. When we have learned to give charitable deeds, when we start doing stuff for others, then we will start to be able to communicate with each other in this manner that we're talking about, spirit to communication. But we have to do what first? We have to do these charitable deeds and separate ourselves from materialism. All right, let's go on. Now, the next section is called the strength of feelings, desires, and fears. Let's look at it. At every moment, you are vibrating mentally and spiritually, but most of the time, you radiate selfishness, hatred, violence, vanity, and the lower passions. You wound and feel it when you are wounded, but you do not love, and so you do not feel it when you are loved. Right? So this is what we're doing now, guys. He's talking about humanity. He's talking about the majority of us. He's talking about all of us. This is what we're doing. We're thinking selfishly. We're thinking about violence and hatred. When we think about our brother, we usually think about the bad stuff he did to us, and how he needs somebody to do him back. Somebody needs to get him back. Hopefully, we've elevated where we're not thinking about doing it back, because we learned in the second era in the New Testament that we call it, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, Paul, and John, and all them people, that that the Father is the one who brings vengeance on them, and we're never really supposed to retaliate against them in the first place. But we're not even supposed to have bad deeds against them either, is what it's saying here in the Third Testament. Let's go on. So, with your insane thoughts, you go saturating the environment in which you live with pain, filling your existence with ill feeling. I tell you, saturate all with peace, harmony, and love, and then you will be happy. So we have to control our thoughts, is what this keep telling us, guys. This section is all about thoughts. But of course, he's got to hammer it home. Our thoughts are important. If we want to have peaceful lives, we're going to have to get them under control. Look at 22. Never think ill of those who do not love you, nor become exacerbated with those who do not understand you. For even the most closely held of the feelings you have toward your fellow men is transmitted with your thoughts. So stop. If they're doing something bad, you gotta block it out. This is one of the reasons why we have to learn, meditation techniques. And I don't know much about that kind of stuff. I watched a couple of YouTube videos that tells you how to meditate. And one of the things that we're talking about was ways you can control your thoughts by concentrating on breathing and that kind of thing. And so when you start to feel these negative thoughts come toward your brother, you got to stop. You got to focus on something else. Think about something else. Take your mind off of it, because they're going to be transmitted and they're going to be multiplied. Look at 23. Do you see those men who seek power through force? Very soon you will see them convinced of their error. Talking about all these wars and stuff that's going on. Everybody think they got the bigger bomb or the biggest army or the best bullets. Go find out in a minute that no, it wasn't that important. Love and charity are the weapons. Their thoughts are more powerful than your nuclear bombs. Look at 24. I will demonstrate to them that solely through goodness, which is the emanation of love, one can be truly great and powerful. All right, love is more powerful than your weapons. What it's saying there. Look at 25. You need faith to raise your faces, smiling with hope, and look forward to the future without doubt or mistrust. For I am in your future. Now, this change that we're about to go through, some people, are using words like rapture, but the Bible doesn't really say anything about us being, taken off the planet or whatever. It says that we're going to be changed, and one of the things that we're going to be changed is we're going to start to be more aware of our conscience. He's saying we're going to wake up to this. All of us at one time are going to wake up to this changed nature, where we're going to be aware of spiritual things. We're going to start hearing voices or whatever, probably coming from our conscious or whatever. Well, when we wake up, some of us are going to wake up to, what does he say there? I'm gonna have to edit that. You need faith to raise your faces, smiling with hope, and look forward to the future without doubts or mistrust, for I am in your future. All right, look at 26. How often are you ill because you think you are? Because you believe every step is dogged by fate or menaced by pain. That is when your mind attracts the darkness, and with it surrounds your material life and your spiritual journey. Meaning you're doing it to yourself. We're doing it to ourselves. It sounds like to me, you can reread the verse for yourself, but it sounds like when we have negative thoughts towards each other, it kind of makes us sick or makes us feel like we're sick. We're doing it to ourselves. That's it. So that's what he means by it comes back and multiply. So, but the opposite is true too then, right? If we start to have good thoughts, then we start to feel better. This is when your mind attracts the darkness, and with it surrounds your material life and your spiritual journey. Now, I know I messed that up. Push the pause button and read this stuff again, guys. Look at 27. Yet, here you have me to reignite your faith in life, trust, eternity, and perfect peace, and to teach you to once more to attract the light of yourselves. So, talking about our thoughts, and if we can control our thoughts, then we can attract the light to ourselves. But if we can't, it's going to be darkness, guys. It's going to be darkness. All right, now we get into the third and the last section. It's called self-control. Man has two weaknesses. He makes no effort to remove his blindfolds in order to study my elevated spiritual teachings, nor does he want to separate himself from those material pleasures that prevents his spiritual progress. See, look at this. Two weaknesses. We want materialism, and then we don't want to study. We don't want to read his word and find out what we show ourselves approved, but yet we want to go, and spend all our time trying to acquire more materialistic stuff. Thus, he has become a slave to his selfish pleasures. Right? His spirit is like a paralyzed human being who makes no effort to heal himself. Why? Because we're too busy, stuck on materialism and ignorance. We don't want nothing to do with it. Talking about humanity. You watching this video, you're like, hey, I want something. But, look how many people have watched this video out of 7.4 billion people on the planet. The rest of the people, what are they watching? Go over there to YouTube and hit the trend button, and you'd see what they ain't not doing nothing trying to elevate their spirit. It's all about materialism. Look at 29. In all works of life, wherever I look, I see the majority of men as being weak. All right. What does that mean? That you do not have enough strength of will to escape from the mire in which you find yourselves, or from the laziness caused by the bonds that tie you to the material, and that is the beginning of all vices and errors. All right? So, you want vices and errors? Keep on in your materialism. Verse 30 says, "But men do not wish to make use of the power which they have been given, which is the will that should be the supreme legislator, which ought to make itself obeyed, in and in concert with reason, fight strength against strength, empire against empire, and one side the passions and desires, on the other reason and will, until the day reason and will win the final battle, and you can say that you are free." Yeah, we don't want that. We're fighting against it. But, we're not going to really have a choice here. This tribulation is going to affect everybody. It's going to touch us, and it's going to straighten us out. Some of us are going to do it willingly. Others, it's going to hurt a little bit. 31 says, "Then you can be the great prophets, the great enlightened ones, the supermen. Then you will be able to live among the beasts and play with reptiles. For truly I tell you, it is the faults covering you that make you fear these little brothers of yours, and it is because of these that they attack you." Yeah, we find that in another section of the Third Testament of the Bible. Yeah, that they're little brothers, talking about nature, talking about snakes and lions and bears and all of this stuff that scare us. It is because we have not gotten to this, we have not elevated our spirits, we don't care about such things, that they frighten us. Over here, on we live, in a place where there's a lot of wildlife, and there's a few people around that refuse to come on our property because of the wildlife. They're scared of stuff like rabbits and deer, and and it's like, hey, this stuff ain't gonna hurt you, but it's because they're so stuck on their materialistic stuff. There's one neighbor that, every time a dog walks past her yard, she calls me up. I have to go down there and, get the dog. She's so scared of it. But, anyway, let's go. 32. "Yet if you observe men, you will see there are men who are fiercer than tigers and more poisonous than cobras." These are the men that have learned to control their thoughts, guys. Yeah, you ain't worried about no tigers, ain't worried about no poisonous cobras or nothing like that. Why? Because they're in control of their thoughts. They're in control. They're more in touch with their spirit, and these beings become our little brothers, and we find that they're here to serve us, just like Genesis says. They're here for our pleasure. All right, guys. I wish this could be more entertaining for you guys. I wish I could make less errors, but I'm not trying to draw attention to myself and make you think I'm a great speaker or nothing. No, I'm trying to draw your attention to the scripture. So I hope I made enough mistakes and errors in this thing that you go read it for yourself. Third Testament of the Bible. Chapter 35, thoughts? Have some good thoughts about me. Maybe I'll get better. Praise ye the Lord. Hermes Academy. Power, patience, continence, and faith. We teach virtue.